And so please help me welcome the new chair of the Oregon Business Plan, John Carter.
Well, thank you and good morning. I see a lot of smiling faces out there, which must mean you liked what Senator Wyden had to say and Senator Merkley, or it may well be you just haven't read the weather report for the next 10 days. Thank you very much, Senator Merkley, for the kind introduction, and we'd like to add our congratulations to Senator Wyden and his new baby daughter. Of the introduction, the part I'd like you to remember is the part about the Pendleton roots. For several generations, my wife and I have enjoyed the benefits of those roots. We love this state. We're very proud of its heritage, and we're very confident in its future, but it has its challenges. On my part, without those Pendleton roots, including a great public school education, none of the rest of my career would have been possible. And after all is said and done today, it's good to remember that what we are all trying to achieve is to make those same opportunities available for our children and our grandchildren. So 10 years, that's a remarkable run for the Oregon Business Plan. Thanks to the foresight of Senator Wyden and the commitment of elected and business leaders who care deeply about Oregon, we have together created a forum which is unique in the nation. The plan represents a bipartisan effort to bring together diverse groups to forge a consensus on actions that are needed to achieve the plan's goals. Those goals, simply put, are to create 25,000 new jobs a year, to raise our personal income levels above the national average, and to lower poverty rates. The plan's unusual, if not unique, platform has united business groups and provided a forum for rational discussion. Its ambitious agenda and long-term vision have paid dividends and continue to pay dividends for the state of Oregon. It has defined the issues, which has allowed focused efforts by other groups to try and achieve those same consensus goals. So I'd like to take a moment to thank all of those who have served in this position before me, and to thank the leaders of the Oregon business community, including Associated Oregon Industries, the Oregon Business Association, the Portland Business Alliance, and multiple chambers of commerce around the state. I also want to acknowledge the terrific job that Duncan Wise and Jeremy Rogers have done in articulating the message and shaping the agenda of the summit, and all those in the past. He already got one round of applause, so we'll hold it on this one. Special thanks to Pat Wrighton, who did a great job of reshaping the plan in 2010 into its current form. Pat has been a champion of promoting regional agendas and has reinforced the fact that this is the Oregon Business Plan, not the Willamette Valley Business Plan. So those are tough shoes to fill. And thanks to our state, federal, and local elected officials whose participation and support has been essential to the plan's success. So why are we here today? I'll come back to some basics about the overall business plan, but first a little context for our meeting and the discussions we were having. Today, we want to set our 2013 goals. And you note in your packet, you have one of these very small business cards that articulates those in a very simple and straightforward fashion. We need to fix PERS. We need to balance the solution to a severe economic problem with fairness to our state employees. We need to invest wisely in education. We need to make effective use of the funds we have and the funds that we can access with a solution to our PERS problem. And we need to build a bridge. We need to deal with the safety, navigation, and freight mobility problem while the time is right to do so. It will provide a near-term job stimulus, and it's also the optimum time to finance an infrastructure project of this magnitude. We want to talk about our challenges to economic growth because our recovery is fragile. We want to celebrate our past successes, and there are several major areas to celebrate. And we want to plot the course for our future successes. There's a lot of work left to do. We need to complete the things that are underway, and we need to restart the circle of prosperity also on the other side of that business card in your packet. Our agenda is a full one. We'll hear from Governor Kitzhaber, further from Senators Wyden and Merkley, and from Rudy Crew, our new Chief Education Officer. In addition, we'll have our afternoon breakouts, and we have the participation of our state legislative leaders who have been good enough to join us for this summit. So first, what are the global economic challenges to our 2013 goals and our long-term success? Oregon exists in a very competitive economic landscape, domestically and internationally. We're buffeted by many forces which we can't control. So we need to focus on the things that we do control, those things which will make us a more attractive and competitive place to do business. As I frequently remind my friends who like to think that Oregon is a unique and self-sustaining place, we may be unique, but self-sustaining we are not. We import most of our energy, most of our manufacturing goods, and unfortunately we import many of those in our skilled workforce because we don't educate them for the skills that we need here. And despite local attitudes to the contrary, Portland is not a biosphere. What happens in the rest of the world economy matters a great deal to us here. Is this interdependence a good thing or a bad thing? It is neither. It is simply the way it is. But it does mean that we have to understand the global economy. Both national and international issues are relevant to us, and we need to understand them to know what we have to do here to grow and prosper. Right now, as you can see on the slide on personal income, we have a lot of work to do on personal income. We trail the U.S. average dramatically, and we also trail our neighboring states. We also need to accelerate job creation. We have, as you can see again, work to do here merely to get back to where we were 3 or 4 years ago. Keys to this are education, manufacturing jobs, and infrastructure jobs. So let's start with some existing global storm warnings that can affect our economy that we don't control. There are some obvious macro issue uncertainties, and you heard a little bit this morning about the fiscal cliff. Optimists think it will be resolved, and maybe it will be, but the method and timing are tough to predict, and whatever the solution is, it will affect us here in Oregon. Any resolution will most likely involve increases in federal tax revenues, which could well have a dampening effect on growth based simply on historical data. But our problem either way is that we'll still need to find better ways to access capital, the capital we need to grow here in Oregon. And that's one of the objectives of the business plan. What are the key expectations for next year on a global economic scale? Well, the OECD, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, released its prediction for 2013 last week at 1.4% growth rate. That's down from 2.2% at their last prediction in May. So the trend line is not encouraging. Most importantly, the report noted that the risk of a major contraction cannot be ruled out. So what about the European zone and other of our trading partners? Slow growth, if any, in 2013, and it continues to deteriorate in a negative way in 2012. They've made some progress with Greece, but the agreement last week reached was mostly a Band-Aid. The Greek tragedy will continue to play out in 2013. Spain is likely to come back for more aid next and has internal issues that are huge with the Catalonian separatist group winning their recent local elections. France has had its credit downgraded. It may be the next major economic crisis in Europe. England has had plant closures, but they actually expect some growth. The real question is, how much can Germany carry on its shoulders? How much could the Germans hold together the European community. No matter how you look at it, the European story in 2013 is not a very positive one. Well, what about the Chinese? That's a very important area for us. China is accepting a lower growth rate for its future, but it looks like they have achieved some stability and have stopped their recession. There's expected growth in 2013. They may get back to an 8% rate, up from 7.7% this year, but still far below the 2010 and earlier double-digit growth rates. There was excitement in the markets this morning on their Purchasing Managers Index being optimistic. So there are some good things coming out of China, but not robust. Their property market has shown signs of turning positive, which is very important, but they have overcapacity in steel manufacturing and other manufacturing areas, which means for us, the commodity boom is probably over in the near term. But the Chinese are acting. You heard Senator Wyden talk about infrastructure. A month and a half ago, they announced a new stimulus program of infrastructure at $160 billion level, which is a major reason as to why they're expected to return to growth in 2013. Other emerging economies are much the same story as China, with Brazil and India expecting some uptick in their growth. We have the Middle East tensions. That's an obvious question mark. There are no predictions that they'll be resolved in 2013. One bright spot for us is our lessening dependence on Middle Eastern energy. What about expectations for growth here? We're not seeing robust growth predictions for the U.S. The current consensus is 1.9% for 2013, and that's soft. The expectation that the economy will continue to limp along, and it's not clear what actions in Washington, D.C. in the near term will be. There is hope the Federal Reserve will continue aggressive easing, and there are some positives in the housing market. But there was also a notation last week that for the first time since 2008 recession began, there is actually consumers falling behind in their automobile payments, which has never happened before. The Congressional Budget Office estimates that the economy will not reach its full potential until 2018. And in Oregon, while we saw some uptick last quarter, last month's growth rates seem to be a little bit anemic. So why does all this matter? Well, it matters because we're an export-driven economy. The traded sector is key, which means the world economic situation means a great deal to us. We sell to these economies. Schnitzer Steel, Precision Castparts, Jeld-Wen, Nike, Intel, Vigor, and many other companies, large and small in Oregon, depend on the traded sector. So what do we do about our growth in the face of this uncertain global picture? As I started out with, we work on the things we control, and that's the central philosophy of the Oregon Business Plan. We do the things that make us more competitive. So what does that mean? How do we achieve these goals? In your packet, you'll find the business plan policy playbook, which outlines our broad objectives in two major categories: public service redesign initiatives and jobs initiatives. Our early morning sessions and our later breakout sessions this afternoon address all 15 of these specific initiatives. But they're all intertwined in the summary position of what we're trying to do: create 25,000 new jobs annually, raise our personal income levels above the national average, and reduce our poverty rate. How do we do it? Well, first, we focus on the creation of high-paying jobs. Traded sector jobs, infrastructure programs are high on the list. Manufacturing matters. Oregon has a good manufacturing base, and a stronger one than most other metropolitan areas in the U.S. The sad truth is that the U.S. lost 41% of its manufacturing jobs over the last 30 years. But we now have an opportunity to regain some of that ground if we do things right. Why does it matter about manufacturing? Well, manufacturing jobs pay well, and they provide work for the groups most likely to slip into poverty. minorities, those without advanced education degrees, and others that are most affected by business downturn. They are key to the business plan objective to reduce poverty. Manufacturing jobs are also critical to innovation and technical advances. T.J. Rogers, a name some of you may be familiar with, is a legendary Silicon Valley figure. He's the CEO of Cypress Semiconductor. Last week, he pointed out in a San Francisco Chronicle article that California was a horrible place to do business, very unfriendly, and a regulatory nightmare. This is not something the business plan aspires to. But Rogers, who recently donated the last Cypress Semiconductor fabrication facility in San Jose to the local food bank, made the case that the state needed manufacturing jobs to turn around its poverty level. More than 2,000 people worked in that facility. They were good family wage jobs that did not require advanced degrees. Rogers argues that the loss of these manufacturing jobs and many others in the valley, there are many companies, including some very high-tech companies that brag about the fact they no longer have any manufacturing facilities in California. The loss of these manufacturing jobs means that the innovation and technology edge enjoyed by Silicon Valley over the last 50 years will inevitably disappear. He was articulating a point. If you can't build it, you can't improve the engineering of it. If you lose the ability to manufacture, your ability to innovate, to improve, to produce the next generation of product will be lost. Oregon needs jobs across the spectrum, and to attack the poverty level, it needs manufacturing jobs, and that is a key objective of the business plan. Our business plan initiative on industrial land supply and readiness, as well as our focus on retaining our advantages in energy costs, are both keys to attracting more manufacturing jobs. We need a sensible energy plan to keep those costs low, including building the cross-state natural gas pipeline to allow access to new low-cost natural gas supplies. We're on these topics this afternoon. Infrastructure jobs are important. These jobs are needed now. The impact of the Intel fabrication plant project is dramatic. The jobs improvement in the local sector is largely due to that Intel work. Building the bridge will have a similar stimulus on local jobs. Like manufacturing, these infrastructure jobs favor the part of our workforce that most needs the help and keeps people that don't have higher education degrees employed and out of poverty. A point I made years ago in one of these sessions is that we were blessed with huge infrastructure investment by our parents' generation, with margin for us to grow provided by that investment. And we've used up that margin without replacing it for our children and our grandchildren. The statistics about our current state of basic infrastructure are dismal. Let's not make that our legacy. We also work on key regional opportunities, many discussed in this morning's sessions, and they'll be the subject of presentations and breakout panels. And they include accommodating both fish and farming and using water from the Umatilla Basin, managing our federal forests for health and economic benefit in our rural communities, and other important job-creating initiatives. But education remains the long-term key. What the governor is doing on education reform is critical. A long-term vision that will allow us to provide the skills we need to have a competitive workforce. STEM education is an important part of this effort, and you'll hear more about that later this morning. We need to give our workforce the skills that the economy needs, both now and in the future. And you've all seen the disappointing statistics here about high school graduation rates in recent days. Attracting business to Oregon means a healthy, efficient, and productive education system. We don't need another Doonesbury cartoon. Secondly, we need to boost the productivity of Oregon's public sector. One of the 4 Ps in the business plan strategy is productivity, which includes competitive regulatory environment and competitive costs for business. The old saw about uncertainty as the enemy of investment is true. We need a stable and predictable regulatory environment to allow businesses, new and existing, to plan for investment. We need to make regulatory decisions on a timely basis to provide certainty to businesses that want to expand or to locate here. We don't do it today. When decisions on industrial land use, permits, and licensing take longer than a business cycle, it's simply not good enough. Our public services and their support to the economy are threatened by rising and unsustainable costs in our public employee retirement system. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about our volatile revenue system, which is dependent on tax receipts from income taxes and capital gains. We need to create a change in that paradigm. We also recognize the work we need to do on public safety costs, the subject of another of our important initiative sessions. The governor's budget tackles this issue as well. Third, we need to focus on the simple fact that more jobs in our current revenue system means more taxpayers, which is essential to improving our public revenues. But let's not forget that we're making excellent progress on the business plan objectives over the last 10 years. It's important to talk about what we yet need to do, but it's also important to celebrate our successes. What have we achieved? Major education reforms are underway. These are absolutely critical to our long-term success, and the governor's budget continues that process. Major healthcare reforms are underway. Again, with the governor's leadership, we are reshaping the delivery of healthcare in Oregon. The 2009 Jobs and Transportation Act created momentum that we don't want to lose in this area. Major investments in innovation and signature research, again, are continued in the governor's budget. The 2003 PERS reforms was a good start, but as we've said, we need to do more to address the economic impact of not acting to address these issues. Again, the budget of the governor has taken these on. In your materials, you'll see reports on each of the initiatives and how we've done. So again, what are the things we're focusing on for 2013? Fix PERS, free up needed resources and revenue for education. Invest wisely in education with those newly available resources, and continue the reforms underway driven by Governor Kitzhaber and Rudy Crew. Build a bridge. It's time to actually replace the inadequate and unsafe I-5 bridge across the Columbia to improve the flow of goods and trade for the long term, and in the short term, create needed jobs. We've studied this project for more than a decade. I personally submitted a plan for this project 10 years ago. It's time to build it. And we need to improve the sustainable use of our natural resources, particularly Eastern Oregon resources, with timely work on healthy forest and additional water for agriculture and related uses. So to close, I'd like to note we have some key advantages in Oregon. We have affordable energy. We have a dedicated political will to improve our competitive position. And we have a firm industrial base. Institutions like OHSU, like Intel, and business investment from our leading companies, which are driving growth, innovation, and investment in the state. And we have local initiatives like the Metro-sponsored Community Investment Initiative and the Southern Oregon Manufacturing Group, which help us as well. And we have the Oregon Business Plan, a framework in which to set goals and objectives that will help build a prosperous future while protecting the values and sustainable advantages for our people and their quality of life. We welcome you to the Oregon Business Summit and encourage each of you to participate as much as possible in all the activities here. Most importantly, we don't want your participation and enthusiasm to stop at the doorway. We need that concentrated effort by all Oregonians to improve our state economy, provide more jobs for our citizens, and get more efficient and effective use out of our tax revenues for public services. Let's go to work, and thank you very much.